Hi everyone, welcome to a new podcast series, Masters of Product Management. Who can become a product manager is a question we get asked all the time. And there is a misconception that you have to be a computer science engineer or a computer science graduate to break into product management. So today, with Ashank, who's been a product manager at first at Flipkart and then at Amazon and then eventually lately at Tootsie, we'll explore, whether people from non-computer science backgrounds can also break into product management. We'll also talk about how students, essentially freshers who are in their final year, can break into product management as well. So tune in for the conversation. Hi, Ashank.
Hey, Pratham.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Great to have you today.
Pleasure to be here.
So we'll cover lots of things today, and we'll keep this casual and fast-paced.
Sure.
So, of course, this series is about product management. And as you know better than anybody else, product management as a term has been thrown around too loosely.
That's right.
Right? It means everything and it means nothing.
That's right.
So we'll try to distill it down for our audience today.
Most definitely.
And we'll focus on a specific question that we'll come to. But before that, I'd love to get to know you. What was your journey? Of course, your education and your initial sort of work experience. Would love to learn more about that, and how all of that sort of led you towards product management.
Sure.
So if you can give us that story,
Yeah.
would love to get started with that.
Most definitely. I'm from Bangalore, and I think the story of every Bangalorean is you first become a computer science engineer, and then you figure out what you truly want to do in life.
Okay.
So I did that too. I studied computer science in Bangalore. I then got campus placement. I started working with Hewlett Packard.
Okay.
I did that for about 4 years. So coding, extreme operating system level, hardcore coding. I enjoyed that space, by the way. Had a good time there. In parallel,
So
though,
accidental, but still you enjoyed.
I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I think product management happened, but much later. So it wasn't like I planned product management.
Got it.
Right. So just a precursor to the story would be that I, in fact, regard myself or call myself as an accidental product manager, where I discovered it and I just realized, similar to if you've watched the movie Slumdog Millionaire,
Yeah.
where the participant just happened to know all the answers because of life events.
Sure.
I think I relate to that story in
Okay,
some way
awesome. All right.
with respect to product management. When I started off, of course, one was coding. I had started as a performing artist, as a theater performing artist, even when I was an undergrad in Bangalore. And while I was a part of HP, I co-founded a theater team along with a bunch of friends
In Bangalore.
in Bangalore.
Awesome.
And the dream was to eventually make it big in the space of arts entrepreneurship. Right?
Okay,
Of course,
interesting.
naive me didn't know anything about funding and capital raising or something. It was just about, hey, bunch of us
The passion,
getting
yeah.
together, we having fun. We were doing well. We were touring. We were having a lot of regular shows. Great ratings overall. Either ways, coming back to this side, so I had sort of these two avatars running in parallel.
The
And
one in the morning at HP, and then one in
That's
the
right.
evening.
One in
as
the
you-
evening as a theater
as
guy.
a theater. Okay.
And it was a slightly different format of theater. So it was a lot, it's called Radical Mime. So it was a lot more physical humor, very minimalistic, zero props,
Okay.
very minimalistic in terms of audio. So different space. So it was like building your own sort of brand and vocabulary in terms of, how you connect with the audience,
Very interesting.
which is fun.
So, I mean, we will talk about.
Sure.
But I'm just interested. How did you get into theater in the first place?
I guess I was always, I enjoyed stage. I enjoyed performing in school. This was in school. So right from school, I started with some play maybe. I would have probably been a tree or something. But eventually I figured that it's a space that I enjoy.
Got it.
And one thing led to the other. I found like-minded people. I auditioned in a couple of places. I got feedback and I figured maybe that's my thing. And I wanted to keep that sort of fire burning.
Got it.
And met people and it just happened. I guess that's what happened for me. When I was quitting HP, this was about 4 years.
Why did you
after I
decide to
joined.
quit?
I actually wanted to pursue theater full time.
Got it.
I had Bollywood dreams too. So I actually quit everything. I went to Bombay for some time. So everything that you've seen a struggling actor do in terms of holding a placard, going from studio to studio, auditioning, getting rejected, I've done all of that.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
And in parallel, of course, the theater team back in Bangalore. So sort of balancing between the two. I got to see a few things firsthand, all the unspoken things or now, fairly public stuff. So I probably figured maybe hardcore Bollywood or any of these things weren't my calling as such. And I wanted to come back to Bangalore and find other ways to channelize my creative energies.
Got it.
So then it became like conversations with multiple people. Like I was interacting and meeting folks. And probably 6-7 months later, I told myself that I want to do an experiment for 6 months where I'll work with a marketing and design agency. A friend of mine who just said, "Ki, you know what, come join us.
Fair.
We need somebody who's coding." Because I was a coder. So I said, sure, no problem. So they basically created designs and I helped convert them into websites and web-based modules. So I started with that coding aspect. That place was interesting for me because it was a marketing, brand, and design agency. So for me, it was also another way to express creatively. So, writing ad film content, working with them, being a part of shoot sets and so on and so forth. So it was a nice place where I got a
How large was
mix
this
of
company? Was this
small,
acha.
about 10,
Right.
12.
The complete
man.
opposite of HP.
Complete opposite. Completely opposite. There were times where we had to sweep the floor because we were expecting a client to come in. The person didn't walk in.
Got it.
So we've done that too. Good learning experiences.
So how
for
many
me.
years were you there?
I was there for about 2.5 years.
2.5 years. Got it. So 4 years of HP, 6 months of struggling?
Well, no, actually, that's the thing. So I told myself I'll do this for 6 months only.
Okay.
So I did this. And in parallel, I also joined a corporate training company.
Okay.
Again, a bunch of friends of mine, few folks who I've done theater plays with before. So they were directors and producers and all of that. And they were starting a company which was using theater as a way of connecting with people for corporate education.
Okay.
Topics could be management and multiple things like cultural immersement and so on and so forth. It was a great way for me also to reconnect back with theater. I found a nice blend of my corporate experience and my theater experience through corporate training. So I was doing corporate training, the marketing and design, and I continued being a performing artist.
Got it. So you were incredibly confused in life.
I was incredibly busy in life.
Busy.
Happy confused.
Happy confused, of course.
Working for 7 days a week, figuring out that something will work out.
Correct.
So I did that. I told myself 6 months, but I ended up doing
But were
it
you
for 3 years.
enjoying yourself more than you were at HP?
I loved it.
Okay.
I loved it. I found a great way to sort of channelize every single thing. So I love technology.
So you were coding.
I was coding. I love connecting with people. So that was
The marketing.
theater, corporate training. I liked creating abstract concepts into actionable sort of things to do, which was also there in both the experiences. And I eventually, in the marketing and design, so that was about 70% of my week, the first one that I spoke about. That's called Lazaro Advertising. And there I eventually ended up hiring a bunch of engineers and I moved into client management. Right? And I say this for a reason because I didn't realize that in many ways that was actually product management.
Got it.
We didn't know that there was a technical term for it, or if I can use Hindi a little bit, ki samaj mein izzat hai, right? I didn't know what to call it, so we called it client manager.
Right.
My job was to connect with all of them, to understand their requirements, to understand customers that were there, and then build products meant for them.
Got it.
Right. So I used to convert those requirements, abstract requirements, come back to my company.
You were a product manager.
I was a product
Got
manager.
it.
I didn't know that, right?
Right.
So that's what happened. And these sort of doing three things, Avatar continued. So what was 6 months as an experiment ended up becoming a 3-year stint.
Okay.
And then I found myself, serendipity had a calling, and I got into B School. So I did my flagship program in business management from ISB Hyderabad, Indian School of Business. I graduated in 2018. And it is during B School that I realized that there's something called product management.
What year is this now?
This was 2017.
2017. Okay. Awesome.
2017, 2018. I graduated in 18. So 2017 is when I discovered, oh, this is what it is. So there was a small instance. So there was a business and technology.
Sorry, we'll just pause. Why did you decide to do your MBA? You said you had your calling.
Yeah.
What was the calling? What led you to doing your MBA in the first place?
Great question. I was finding myself being a part of a lot of small setups. For example, all of the companies, including my own, which I were in the space of arts entrepreneurship, I found myself sort of hitting a glass ceiling when it came to skill sets in terms of scaling, in terms of how do we take this to the really next big level. In all of the places, I didn't seem to have the answer. So for me,
I get that. So now, I mean, I want to dig a little bit deeper there. A lot of people say that, right? That they ended up doing their MBA because they hit a glass ceiling, or they felt they couldn't grow, or they felt they lacked the skills. But now looking back, do you think the MBA helped you break all of those barriers? Or do you think that was just something you were telling yourself?
I think it did. I definitely think it did. So my version of an MBA was, I was also slightly, so the median age in terms of experience at ISB was about 4.5 years. I had already done 7-8 years. So I was probably double
Okay.
in terms of the median. And because I didn't have the pressure, I sort of walked in with, I just want to learn. I just want to learn. I want to meet and interact with folks who walk in from such diverse experiences. The faculty that were there also were, again, coming in from different universities. So I just wanted to learn from them on the gaps that I had already recognized.
Got it.
I was very well aware. I think one of the things that I am now grateful for, definitely to my family, for sort of investing in all of my maniacal sort of overnight, I want to do this tomorrow, I want to try this new. They were very supportive of that. Everybody was. I'm grateful because it gave me the opportunity to try a lot of different things. I don't look back with anything with regret because I've now tried a lot of things. I know some things didn't work for me, some things worked for me. And because of these different experiments, I was able to acknowledge and very clearly quantify what my strengths and weaknesses were.
Got it.
And because I had clarity of that, even my investment into MBA, which sort of was a very nice leaning force into picking only those things that spoke more to my weakness so that I can get more awareness or I can know where to reach out to next. And strengths, I kept sort of sharpening that blade as and when needed.
Understood.
So it was a very calculated move for me in terms of doing it at that point in time. There was also personal reasons. I was already married by then. In fact, my wife and daughter were with me on campus.
Very interesting.
So my daughter's school was coming up, so I was like, okay, I have to finish it now.
Of course.
And the timing-wise, it worked out well for me. So in terms of personal and professional life, I think it happened at just the right time for me.
Understood. So your MBA experience was a very deliberate one.
Absolutely.
It wasn't something, that a lot of people do MBA because pata nahi ab kya kare.
Exactly.
But you went with an agenda ki, okay, these are my gaps, I have to fulfill these gaps.
Absolutely.
Got it.
And the place was also deliberate, just because of the diversity that was there. And I think I made a lot out of my 1 year there. I don't think in terms of the classroom learnings, I don't think any B school, anywhere, right? 1 year later, you ask any student, can you write down everything that you have learned across your 1 year or 2 year program? They might max fill up an A4 sheet. Right? It's what you learn from your peers, some things that sort of imbibe in you as a personality, and the cohort and the network that you build. That for me was the biggest takeaway.
Got it. So it's a 1 year program. And towards the middle, you probably had your placements, that experience start. So was your first product management role through the placement experience?
Yes. Formally, yes. But like I said, prior to that, I was already doing product management. It was during one of the clubs that I was just talking about, Business and Technology Club. They put up saying, we have a 1 hour seminar on product management. Now, the naive person that I was, I thought product, they meant some software product somebody wants to build. I'm a software guy. Let me go and figure it out. But when I walked in, somebody had only written a problem statement on the board. And I don't recall what it was, but it was something on the lines of an abstract problem statement. And I said, okay, I see it. I then took my own approach. I had a framework, I had a thought process around it because I've been doing it. And I just wrote like, here's probably what we can do. There were a set of features, you can build this here, you can build this here. And then people are like, hey, have you done this before? Are you a product manager? I said, no, but I've done this in the past. Like, this is product management. I said, oh, okay.
Easy.
that was like a happy click that happened. And then I think after that, I just sort of started discovering that more. I explored more into it. I realized it's been such a deeply rooted vocation, not in India as much yet. At least this was 2017, so it was still not yet there the way it is today, which is 22. And I read up about it. And then I realized this is coming together of a lot of different skill sets, but of course it was very theoretical. So through placements, and I got placed at Flipkart while I was on campus. And then of course I continued, finished and joined Flipkart. And when in the first 3 months there was a lot of unlearning, relearning and learning for the first time that happened for me about, okay, I've been doing it informally, product management, and this is the formal way to do it. There were a lot more structured frameworks around it.
So, every product manager I meet has his own definition or her own definition of what product management is, right? And you use the word frameworks twice or thrice in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So what is your definition of product management? How do you define product management to your parents or to your grandparents or to your son,
My
daughter,
to
your daughter? Could you share that with us?
That's a tough one. I know that's the best part, right? It's the fact that nobody has able to put a pin on it. I'll tell you my version of it. I think a product manager is a relentless advocate for a customer in an environment that was conventionally filled with engineers, with business folks, with designers, and with analysts.
Mhm.
I don't think the world needed product managers at some point in time, and the role evolved so much so that people also question. I'm sure engineers at some point question, why do we need product managers? We are anyway building it, right? I read this somewhere, and I don't recall where, that a product manager is somebody who does everything without doing anything,
Okay.
right? Because we don't technically code. We do very basic wireframes when it comes to it. We do very basic level, sometimes advanced based on where you are, but essentially we do some level of data analysis. And then after that, we give it to an expert who then goes ahead and does it. In terms of business, we have a good enough business understanding, but when it comes to certain refined functions, we hand it over, or rather they are business folks who do their own thing.
So can you take me through a product management journey, right? So let's say there's a problem statement. Can you give me an example of a problem statement and how you sort of took it through the entire loop, which you just mentioned?
Sure. Maybe I can take an example of what I did at Flipkart.
Okay.
I was one of the product managers that was looking at books as a category. So books is one of the
OG.
OG, the OG, right? So it was touching the holy grail of Flipkart. Very exciting space. My problem statement was obviously two things. One is we need more users or customers to come to Flipkart when it comes to books as a category. And two, how do we help customers convert? Basically increasing sales, and how do we have customers repeatedly coming
So that's
back?
the problem statement.
These were the problem statements. That's all there was.
Did you identify this problem statement yourself, or was this given to you? Or is this understood?
This was sort of understood, where every category goes through its own life cycle, where you would have started with a certain something, and there are small investments that happen, but sometimes the gap between where you are and the industry or the customer expectations has drastically shifted.
Got it.
So how do you sort of either play a catch-up game, or how do you play what's new or the innovation game? So it was sort of pivoted in that direction. And I just took it up on those lines. And my starting point, as always, and anytime I meet people who are interested into product management, is how well do you know your customer? So for me, it was then going back, looking at data. I just started with some data, primary research, secondary research, read reports.
You spoke to customers as well?
I did do that too. So I pulled up data around customers, folks who had purchased different kinds of books, right? What I started realizing was that there was a pattern that was emerging, where there was a slightly different customer behavior when it came to academic books versus those that were non-academic books. That could be novels, that could be any kind of books. Right? There were nuances that were there. I just picked up that based on some early conversations. So then I double-clicked into it because it was a hypothesis that I had. So double-clicked into it. I then spoke to specifically customers who had purchased one category versus the other category. And then those hypotheses started becoming a little bit more deep-rooted. So these were customers who were purchasing from Flipkart. Then, of course, I corroborated this with industry, secondary research, and data. It sort of added up somewhere. So the story was lining up well. Incidentally, there was a book fair. While I was doing this, there was a book fair that happened in Delhi, Pragati Maidan. And I thought of just walking in. Let's just go, let me figure, why do people come to read books or to purchase books? Why do we need such a large place when we have, such easy to opt for options like Amazon and Flipkart or any of the e-com players? So I did a lot of walk-in interviews. So people who were just purchasing books, I just walked up to them saying, "Excuse me, sir, I need your time. Madam, I just need some time." And I questioned them. Like, how did you think of this book? Why are you thinking about this book? Is price, how important is price to you? Do you know you can get the same product for cheaper rate here? Why are you still planning to buy it here? I then also got an opportunity to speak to publishers. And publishers, that's their everyday. They know who their readers are, who are essentially customers. Through them, I got like, what if I talk to one publisher, it's like talking to 100 customers. Right? So for me, that spectrum opened up, created new hypotheses, confirmed some of the ones that I had before, and debunked a few more. So this entire sort of research journey backed then by data. So if, say, for example, I'll take an example of Chetan Bhagat, right? Some book is coming up, you'll see suddenly a spike in Google. Chances are you'll see a spike even in Flipkart. In which case, what do you then do to surface? Are they searching for the latest book? Are they searching for some of the bestseller books? Which is interesting, right? Because you have only so much of a real estate in a mobile screen. What do you show first to keep the customer engaged? Because essentially that's our job. We want to keep the customers on the platform. So all of that research and insights, and then talking to business teams and all of these sort of different stakeholders, and my own industry and competitor research. There were the likes of Amazon. There are, equivalent competitors in the US who do, great things. collecting all of that and then building an actionable roadmap. So it's essentially an abstract one-line problem statement. Start with a bunch of hypotheses, do your research, map it to what you know that the platform already has and doesn't have in terms of capabilities. And then breaking it down based on different teams, because Flipkart has so many different teams. There's search, there's merchandising, there's different pages that are there. And then creating actionable roadmaps, right? And then taking this as a pitch document to the business team who loved it, and then taking this to respective product managers who are owning each of their areas, and then saying that, hey, if you just do this, there's so much more benefit that you get.
Understood. So I understand the loop now, right? So you identified the problem, you collected data, primary, secondary, did your own research, hypothesized a solution, validated the solution in a smaller market.
That's right.
And then sort of broke it down into sprints or into smaller business cases that you then got validated from your team, got the buy-in, and then built it up. And then, of course, then collected data, kept iterating.
And the loop just kept going from there.
Going.
That's right.
Very cool. I think this is one of the better understandings of product management that I've ever gotten. So thanks so much for that.
No problem.
So what happened after Flipkart?
So Flipkart, I was there for about 2.5 years. I got to work with the search product team. In fact, that was very interesting where it went into machine learning and very different things that I hadn't done before. So maybe that was a lot of new learnings. I was also part of the core discovery product team. So what I then did, and I figured, because of my past experiences, where as a theater practitioner, as a corporate trainer, engaging with customers was something that came naturally to me. I'm also picking my roots from theater, where if you are an actor, you're the first thing you do is to empathize with your character. You really go deep into your character. Correct. As a director, if it's a 3 or 4 person play, you need to empathize with each of the 4 different characters, because that's when you work with your respective actors, help them empathize, and then you sort of build product for it. My learnings from theater were everything you do, especially as a director, is you are creating content, the stage, the visuals, the music, the actors, everything, the casting. It's all for one thing, which is how is the audience going to receive it? As an actor, you're about, what's my role? Where am I going to be visible? What's my costume? And all of that. But as a director, you're always sitting with the audience, watching the play with the audience. Because you want to listen in on how the audience is reacting to it. And then you go back, make changes, and then come back again. As a product manager, I found myself in a very similar disposition, where I am constantly doing something, but all of those things only have meaning based on the audience or the customers who are using it. Right? So there were good parallels that I was able to draw. So I focused more on being on the discovery side. So my core areas in product, while I know it's sort of widespread, there's supply chain, there's so many different streams that you can choose. I intentionally chose discovery and engagement. Growth, discovery, engagement. These were 3 sort of areas that I kept playing between. Amazon for me was another sort of area where I wanted to explore. Flipkart was a slightly India-based company. I wanted to work with folks who are having international exposure. I wanted to learn a little bit more about...
Flipkart's now owned by Walmart. Was it not at that time?
The company is still very Indian. And your customers are all Indian. I probably wanted exposure.
Got it.
Another reason is, this is a fun fact, but I actually moved out because for me, commute was a lot in Bangalore. It's a nightmare in Bangalore. And where I stay was extremely far away. And Amazon was close by. And that was one of the biggest reasons, to be honest, to move out. And just when that happened, the pandemic struck.
Got it.
So irrespective, I was just stuck at home, and I then moved into another company. No complaints. I learned a lot, even while I was part of Amazon as well, where things were different naturally because of the scale. So there are that many more stakeholders you work with. Here, I probably was one product manager working on one problem statement. There, the similar problem statement, there were product managers also in other countries who were working on it. So you get to learn with them, from them. You learn about those customers through them. I was owning an Indian product. That's what I was working on, even in Amazon India. But my exposure was also, from the international side as well. So great learnings there from a product management standpoint. I was there again for about close to 1.5 years. So 2.5 there, 1.5 there. And serendipity then sort of led to me finding a way into a startup. I probably, because I have had the luxury of experimenting and working with large companies, mid-sized companies, and startups, I was able to take a call and judge that maybe I was at my best self
This is what you wanted.
in a slightly smaller space where maybe my impact is more. And I then found a calling in a health tech startup in India, which is called Tootsie and Skinsy. They are in the space of the market leaders in a particular category of products in Tootsie called invisible teeth aligners.
Invisalign. Would be your
Invisalign is the
competitor.
US.
Competitor, got
Exactly. The US folks, they are in India, but they probably are selling at about roughly 2 lakhs is what I know. And we are at about 60, 65, 70K.
Got it.
But with similar or better technology and results and so many things that come in. Very interesting. For me, it was, I've done a bunch of things.
Let me just stop you. So it's interesting. So first two were e-com products, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, the problem statements were around e-commerce,
Yeah.
and this is now health tech,
Yeah.
where software itself is less important than the user experience itself.
That's right.
So did you work on physical products and manage them, or did you work on, the entire user experience journey?
I think it was an interesting exploration for me. Yes, there was e-commerce. One of the things I forgot mentioning, one of my previous, the marketing and design, we also incubated an e-commerce company there, which was in the space of superbikes.
Okay.
I missed talking about that. So essentially, e-com was for almost 7 years.
Right.
I wanted a change of scene. I also felt like health tech was a very good industry, which was booming and growing. And there were very new problem statements, unsolved for problem statements. Benchmarks don't exist.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is a good thing and a bad thing, because if you don't know if you're doing the right thing, if you have a benchmark, you know you're headed in a certain direction. And if you don't, it's yours to sort of explore and create that benchmark. So I saw these sort of pockets come up, and which is where health tech for me was one of the interesting spaces.
So what's the problem statement in health tech that you're most passionate about or working on?
So
Whatever you can reveal.
yeah, I can, of course. So at Tootsie, this is about oral care, technology which is otherwise restricted to clinics. And those, some will always be there, clinically speaking.
Like if I want braces, I have to go to a clinic.
Exactly. The process is simple. Somebody comes to your house, they take a 3D scan of your oral space. We go back, that scan is then converted into a 3D
so 3D
model.
scan, so there's actually a scanner that they put inside.
That's right.
Okay, got it.
That's right. And then you take that back. There's a team of technical folks who look at that 3D scan and then design what should be your teeth in an aligned way.
Okay.
Say you have teeth gaps or you have crooked teeth, and if you want to correct your smile, they will then create that based on that model. So there's a 3D software which they use for modeling it. But the entire journey, we are a D2C brand.
Right.
So the entire journey is then D2C. So the customer's interfacing is one person coming and doing something. After that, there's digital means in which you stay in touch with the customer. And then somebody comes and just gives you the box. And then you start wearing these aligners, and your sort of treatment journey starts from there. Essentially, the customer journey is at a median level, right from the time the scan happens till, say, they wear their last aligner, is almost about 9 to 10 months. Right? Okay. Sometimes about 11 months as well.
Got it.
Now, that's a long journey. It can be more than that based on the complication. That's a long journey for a customer to stay engaged with us on one treatment.
Right. So from the day the customer comes to you as a lead that's generated till the time his teeth are actually fixed.
That's right.
That's maybe
That's a very
9
long
months.
journey. Yeah.
That's a 9 months journey. And as Tootsie, you have to be part of that journey throughout.
That's right. At every step.
Not just the time, till the time when the person pays.
Exactly.
But till the time his teeth are fixed.
Yeah, there's care, there's post-care, there'll be questions, there'll be, hey, I want a doctor, hey, I want to read something.
Accidents, I mean.
That's possible. My aligner broke, what do I do? Sometimes they want to get in touch with and there's different customer profiles. There are those who are very well read, they know exactly what they want. They know to ask. Some of them, they articulate the problem. For each one, then solving for their problem statement, I think that's where we are kicking in, especially given that we're D2C. There's so much more digital involvement. And in such a core area, which is otherwise medically done. Yes, all of what we do is backed by orthodontists and professionals and all of that. But the other experience aspects is where the entire product management journey comes in.
Got it.
When it comes to Skinsy, it's skincare. So it's we started with laser hair removal from home. We are one of the first few companies in the world to do this. That again comes with how do you explain to the customer laser is safe, a lot of apprehensions around it and so on and so forth. So cool. How do you then reach out to them? Those are problem statements.
So, I mean, to prospective product managers, to aspiring product managers, how do you recommend they decide whether they should, target a larger company like Flipkart or Amazon, or they should work with a smaller startup? How does one decide?
Yeah, that's a great question. My experience on working with the slightly larger companies was the build cycles were slightly longer, which means you focus so much more on going deeper into the data, really answering why. It's also expensive in terms of the build cycles. So the role of the product manager is a lot more deeper on the why. In fact, it's always the same in all companies. I think the difference is build cycles, right? In a smaller setup where you probably are not talking to as many customers, there are not too many processes in place, there are not too many things, so you really prioritize. You do very hard prioritization, especially when you have limited resources, which is also where a PM is needed, because you're trying to assess what works best for my customer. Am I talking to majority of my customers? How do I bring in delight? Or how do I solve their problem statement and move from solving to delight, right? So if there is a lot more hands-on build-based work, process-based work that one needs to do, maybe a startup is a slightly better space. If you are somebody as a personality, there's two kinds of gratification, right? There is short-term gratification and there's long-term gratification. And I think that's very built as a personality. If short-term gratification is for you, maybe startups is a better place.
Got it.
But if you're somebody who likes to
Patience.
and like really plan out a long-term thing, maybe larger companies are for you. Larger companies also offer breadth of different problem statement areas for you to jump, wherein smaller companies might not have those many.
Got it.
So if you want to explore, maybe larger companies, but if you want to stick to one really focus, maybe startups are better.
Got it. That's a very, I think, concise answer that'll be very useful to the viewers. One question, one thing that we always hear is that, to be a product manager, you have to have a background in engineering or computer science specifically. I don't know if this is a myth. I don't know if this is a bias that exists in the market, but I wanted to ask you, if I'm not a computer engineer, do I still stand a chance to become a successful product manager?
The answer is yes. I'll paint the industry, the here and now Indian ecosystem, I'm more familiar with that, is that if you are an engineer, more towards the IT side, so computer science, information science, all of that, the IT side, do you have an advantage? Yes. There is a bias in the industry today. But is it a disadvantage if you are not from that background? The answer is no. Okay. Which means you can acquire those skill sets which are needed in order to engage with the right set of stakeholders in the company. Because a product manager, in most companies that I know, in fact, all companies I have worked in, as a product manager, I didn't code. But I worked with a set of engineers and coders who will do the specific sort of customer roadmap building, etc., where we walk them through what needs to be built. So we talk to designers, we talk to a bunch of different disciplines of people. Now, specifically when it comes to IT, as long as you are able to understand the foundational elements of core product, of core, say, technologies, like, for example, what's an API? What does system architecture look like? Software is not a box. It's a bunch of different components that talk to each other, reusable components, and so on and so forth. And then just have a basic understanding of different technology stacks that exist. The fact that there is web technologies, the fact that there is Android and iOS have different native technologies. You can do very basic courses that are available on many platforms. There are a bunch of people writing about it. There are books available. And as long as you're good with that, you should be able to be.
So is there a course or a book called Product Management for Non-Engineers?
I don't think there's one yet which is fully formally designed. In fact, most often than not, people who are interested end up being tech folks. And then there'll be a small set of people who are non-tech. A fully formal design course for non-tech people, I think that's an area of opportunity for anybody who wants to build products or build a course.
Right.
I think this is the place to invest in.
Correct. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that essentially to become a product manager, it helps that if you have a coding background, if you have a computer science background, but it's not a disadvantage if you don't, if you are open to learning some basic foundational skills.
Yes. And there are other skills also. So for example, there's also a myth that just because I'm an IT engineer, I'll do well as a product manager. I think that's false also.
So there are also computer engineers who never become good product managers.
Who've attempted at it, realized they probably were not good at it and have gone back, right? Maybe now not the best time to judge because it's like a growing bubble in India right now. There's like a buzz and everybody's sort of trying to jump into the bandwagon. But I know when I interact with some folks where maybe they were better off as engineers.
Got it.
Right? Maybe they were just better off. See, as a product manager, there's a lot of agency that you need to drive. I think one of the most underrated skill set as a PM is stakeholder management, which means you need to have high agency.
Explain agency.
Agency is your ability to articulate, convince, and bring people across different disciplines on the same page in order to take
So to align
actionable.
a team to take an
Yeah.
action.
Yes, I definitely think so. And there is also a personality element that comes along with it. I do think that's true. And which sort of makes it easier for you to sort of get into product management, right? So engineers who are probably not very good with people skills, chances are if they don't work on it, they might not survive well as a product manager. Right? So for those who are engineers, I wouldn't be very confident of making it into product management. Right? Product managers need to have a lot of ownership as well, which means there are going to be things which you have never done before, and you'll have to learn overnight, and then do it because you're filling in the gap till somebody comes in. So to sort of constantly throw yourself into the fire, unlearn, relearn, and learn for the first time needs to happen as a repeated cycle. I don't think product managers, even with 10 years of experience, will ever tell you that
They know
I've made
everything,
it.
yeah.
I know everything. There's always new learnings that come in. So yeah, I mean, I think that's true. And you need to learn basics of design, visual design, in case you are on that side of the story, of course. You need to know the language of what a designer would speak. What is a wireframe? What is UX? What is UI?
Correct.
So even as an engineer, you need to learn these things. So if you're a designer, you already have that advantage.
Correct.
All you need to know is learn a little bit about coding and how to talk to engineers, and you're sorted.
Got it.
So based on which background you come from, you need to recognize what you don't have, do what's just about enough. And I think you should be able to be a product manager.
Got it. So people coming from the business end of things, people
Yeah.
coming from sales or marketing,
Yeah.
they have to learn a little bit of foundational computer science. They
That's
have
right.
to learn a little bit of foundational design.
That's right.
And they have
Data
to learn
analytics.
data analytics,
That's right.
and they have to learn how to wireframe.
That's right.
People who are coming from a design background, they need to understand the entire business aspect of things, talking to customers, understanding their problem statements. And then if you're coming from computer science perspective, you still
right.
have to learn
Yeah.
how to sometimes stop being a computer scientist in your head.
It's very hard.
And
In
it's very
fact, it's very hard because as an engineer, you're always thinking solution. But as a product manager, your job is to understand the customer better. And through conversations and through sort of multiple rounds of doing this, the solution emerges or you create the solution later.
Okay. So, I mean, you worked in Flipkart and you worked in Amazon, an Indian company predominantly and a global company. So, and this is my understanding, and it could be completely wrong. So, correct me if it's wrong. Globally, it's not the case that there's a bias for computer science engineers to be product managers.
That's right.
I think in India,
It's
that bias is a
higher.
little bit more,
It's
right?
slightly higher. Only from if you look at purely data, from placements and from how people have gotten into product management, yes, engineers, it just at this point in time, the data will tell you that. But I do know that the industry has evolved. It's learning every day, so to speak. And that trend is shifting.
Got it.
I definitely think so. I probably want to describe product managers as a specialist generalist.
Specialist, generalist.
Right? So you're specializing in being a generalist across multiple things. Coming with agency, having the vision to build the product, which is creating customer delight. Again, always as it's the customer who's the end outcome.
Absolutely. Awesome. So we have now come to the conclusion that being an engineer, being from sales or marketing, you have a equally good chance of becoming a successful PM.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about students.
Yeah.
A lot of students I meet, who are currently doing their BTech or their MBA, and they've never worked before.
Yeah.
They want to break into product management with no work experience.
Yeah.
Now, I know there is a new role called associate product manager that's come in, right? So what I want to understand is it feasible or is it advisable for students with no work experience in any domain, be it engineering or sales or marketing or accounts or finance, to break into product management?
The answer is yes. Primarily because I think at least in the earlier stages, in fact, most of the time, product management is more of a mindset, which is a collection of a smaller set of skill sets. So as long as if you as a person have the right mindset and you're able to, like I explained, the entire loop of what a product manager does, if you are able to do it at maybe a slightly more reduced scale, if say you are the product manager of Instagram and you want to increase engagement rates, all you've been given is say, this is the homepage of Instagram, I need to do this to improve it. As long as you're able to focus on one particular area and do smaller loops, you should be good to go. And the advantage now is that there's so much of literature available. There's so much of content available. There are folks who are in the space of product management who I think as a community are one of the most vociferous communities through podcasts, through content on LinkedIn, through writing pages, to writing books, to whatnot. So there's so much available today. I think access has been great. So for aspiring students, even in associate roles, I think there's a lot available. If you're able to just get into this rhythm and create this practice of going through these loops, you should be easily able to crack it.
We were talking about students becoming product managers, right? And they essentially have to start as associate product managers. So could you tell me, how you see the difference in terms of what what a APM does versus what a PM does? Or is it just the same thing with less salary?
I think it's the area of exposure of problem statement, which is true for any other discipline also. As an engineer, maybe when you start off, you're given very specific stuff, more hands-on, more execution-driven. As an APM, maybe even early stage PMs, perhaps later also, your focus would be a lot more on doing the hands-on stuff a lot more, which is writing the PRDs, talking a lot more to your stakeholders, bringing it together. And as you progress up the ladder, your focus would be more company strategy, more customer-wise, and lesser, because chances are you then are the manager of product managers who will then do those hard skills. But because you've taken that path, at any point you can always go down and sort of pick it up and start doing it too.
Correct. How does one practice that loop? As I'm in let's say final year of my undergrad engineering. How do I practice that loop?
It's about, I think, more creatively thinking of 2-3 different areas. One would be there are existing products. I think different disciplines, right? There are existing products. How do I make it better? For example, I want to improve I take one problem statement. I want to improve the conversion of customers who are searching for television sets on an e-commerce platform. Here, I need to understand what a television set customer would be thinking about. Maybe they're thinking about aspect ratio, distance, volume, screen resolution, I don't know. And how do I communicate this in the best way? So one would be, how do I improve something that exists? The others would be...
So they just sit one day on the computer and they say, okay, let me just assume a problem statement.
That's right.
Let me just make up one.
Yeah.
And let me work towards that.
Yeah.
And is that something that you're advising essentially?
I think it works best when you're working in a group.
Okay.
Because even as a PM, you're always working with other people. Your starting point could be a solo discovery journey, but then you'll eventually end up working with people. Your break-in, and if you want to practice, I think it's good if you do with a group. By saying, hey, why don't let's all work on this problem statement, like the same example I gave you, and each one takes their own dig at it. And then we exchange notes that I thought of it this way. I thought of customers this way. I think customers do this. I look up some secondary research. Are people buying smart TVs, or are they buying... I don't even know a world without smart TVs now. Are touchscreen TVs. Exactly. Are touchscreen TVs the in thing or not? I don't know. Look at industry insights, where the market is headed, and then what can we do to sort of plug into that gap, right? The second kind of problem statements would be, these products don't exist, and I'm sort of creating this for the first time. So like brand new imaginary things. For example, you would have heard of Elon Musk's The Boring Tunnels, where there's the underground passageways. What if you were the first PM hired to build an app which is going to create that customer interface to sort of book a journey through that tunnel? Doesn't exist before.
Right.
There are similar things, but this doesn't exist before.
Okay, so you think of this problem statement. Let's take the Boring Company example. You think of this problem statement, and then you work with your friends, your classmates, and you try to sort of then come up with wireframes. You come up with the actual user flow, the journey. And then you sort of...
industry benchmarking in terms of what's the closest cousin of this? Maybe it's tube trains. I'm just taking an example. Maybe it's tube trains. Maybe it's metro. Maybe it's a bunch of other things which are related to this, which is point A to point B travel. There's a fixed cost. Maybe there's a fixed timing. I don't know. And what kind of vehicle can fit in there? Because it's essentially your vehicle going and sitting. So what's my closest entry point into that tunnel?
So they create hypothetical products in their mind, hypothetical product,
that's right.
Problem statements, hypothetical results. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and you innovate, and then you pick one. Because there are hundreds. You say, we'll pick this one problem statement. And then you go deeper and deeper into it. And then you create that entire roadmap, and you always have a metric, which is one, I think, as a product manager, measurability is key in anything that you're doing. Because only if you can measure it, you'll be able to manage it well. So you then define what those metrics are. And then you debate why I think this metric is better. No, I think this metric is better. And it's through that cohort of people, from their diverse inputs, is where your learning is the best. At least I know that's what we did even when I was in B school. That's exactly what we did. And that for me was a much faster way of learning.
So when you were interviewing at Flipkart, you had, the entire experience, last 8 years of experience and your MBA program to sort of back you up.
Yeah.
And then when you were at Amazon, you had the Flipkart experience backing you up, right? And of course, with both of those, you could have made your way into any company essentially,
That's
right? But as a student, if I've solved these hypothetical problems and I've created presentations and I've created wireframes, is that enough proof of work that I can then take to an interview and say, hey, listen, I've done some product management work?
The good part is people who are also applying to that role have the same playing ground as you are. It's no unfair advantage because they're all students with 0 years of work experience. So if you are able to effectively communicate to the interviewer that you bring in the right mindset, you are somebody who's rooted to customers, and you're able to sort of draw these loops well, I think it would be sufficient, at least from here and now industry standpoint, I think it's sufficient. I know that companies are innovating where they are creating hypothetical simulations, like about 2-hour simulations of different scenarios that happen. And then you select options on choice A, B, C. And then at the end result of that,
Got it.
you then have an outcome from that.
Got it. Very interesting. So, you spoke about a product manager's personality. You briefly touched upon it, that there's a certain personality type that is more suited to product management. So what kind of personality type is not suited to product management? Because let me tell you why I'm asking this question. Because right now in our PGP program at Masters Union, we have almost 180, 200 students. Out of those 200 students, almost 150 of them want to break into product management. I'm sure not all 150 of them would be the right fit for product management. So how does one decide in terms of personality types, whether this is for me or not for me?
It's hard for me to answer that, primarily because I discovered product management. I'm extremely passionate about it, and I believe if I can pick up from the movie Ratatouille, where they say that everybody can cook, my opinion is that everybody can be a product manager.
Okay.
The differentiating factor would be if you are somebody who doesn't enjoy breadth work, who doesn't enjoy, or rather switching between breadth and depth.
Wearing multiple hats.
Wearing multiple hats, being able to talk to people from different disciplines, the patience that some people might not always agree to your viewpoint. Or just because as an engineer, it tends to happen that just because you have a hammer, everything is a nail around you, right? But you breaking out of it and then being okay to adapt into something new. If these things are not for you, or if this is something that doesn't resonate with who you are, you prefer working in a silo, somebody's given you a problem statement, you want to go deep, understand technology, code, come back, great. Maybe you're better off as an engineer. You don't like interacting much with people, perhaps you're better off as an engineer. I don't think we have reached a stage where product management can be worked in isolation. Where as a product manager, I'm not talking to anybody. I don't think we have reached that stage yet.
Right.
I hope we don't get there, because to me, that's the joy of being a product manager.
One of the things that one of the students told me once is, and he's trying to break into product management, was that he thinks of product manager as an architect, like an architect of a building, where there are plumbers and there are people who put the carpets and bricklayers and people who fix the bathroom, right?
Yeah.
But they can't all work together.
That's right.
If there was no architect.
That's right.
The architect has to draw up the blueprints and the plans and everything, right? Is that a fair corollary to understand product management?
I think so. Again, all of these managerial, somebody who understands multiple disciplines is able to draw the connections. For example, if I can pick architect, if there's a certain room, for example, a bathroom is a very complicated area, right? Where there is a plumber, there's plumbing, there's electricity, there is civil,
tiling,
and everything that's there.
Correct.
It's a complicated area.
Correct.
And for you to bring in all of these elements together, you need to understand them to some extent. You know that if a carpenter is going to drill a hole to attach, say, the cabinet, the pipe shouldn't be behind it. Right? Which means you have then spoken to the plumber that don't put a pipe in that area because a cabinet is going to come in. I, as an architect, have the vision of what the final product looks like to an extent. So I'm going to work backwards, talk to each of those different disciplines and give them specific instructions or inputs which will help them do their job best. As an architect, I'm probably the worst plumber, but I know what a plumber can do and where they can make modifications.
Correct. And what the homeowner needs, most importantly.
Exactly. What the homeowner needs. That's true. I'll still go back to my example of I'm biased to theater, so of being a director.
Director, of course.
I'm not acting, I'm not doing anything on stage, but I know everything of what's happening. And I'm able to orchestrate all of that so that the customers have a great experience.
I've also seen this job descriptions coming these days called product owner.
Yeah.
Is that different from product manager?
I think it's confused at this point.
Huh.
Product owners tend to be, and again, I don't think there's a strict definition yet in the industry, but product owners tend to have a lot more inclination towards the business side. At least that's what I have seen. In some companies, I've seen the other extreme where they have more inclination towards the engineering side, which is I'm an engineering product owner. At least that's the direction it's headed in.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's well defined. Also think it is abused as a way of luring people in. So if you're an applicant, I would say just read into what the job description is.
It'll be essentially the same, if not.
Talk to the hiring manager and understand what is it that they're hiring for, and then maybe you can look to apply.
Got it. And final question: what do you not like about product management? What do you think is something that as an industry we have to grow into, mature into?
It's very stressful. Most often than not, thankless till it's sort of the final stages. In Hindi, if you say बहुत गाली सुनना पड़ता है सब लोगों से, because everyone's looking to you for answers, everyone's looking for you to sort of do things quickly, especially if you're in an early stage startup. So I think the ability to context switch and do that continuously, that's hard. And if you're not somebody who's sort of set up for it, highly advisable to stay away from it.
It's going to be stressful.
It is very stressful.
Awesome.
But it's fun.
On that note, thanks so much for coming in. And this was a beautiful conversation.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Is there a question that you wish I'd asked that I didn't ask?
I'm maybe cricket.
Okay.
No, I have one of those examples where I think the best definition, in your opinion, who's the best cricketer?
Oh, wow.
In the current playing era.
I really like Jasprit Bumrah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My answer is Ravindra Jadeja.
Okay, that's fair. Actually, I would have chosen that.
Primarily because as a captain, I'm thinking myself as a captain. I can plug in a Jadeja in so many different situations.
True.
I want somebody to come and bowl a couple of overs. I have a Jadeja. I need somebody to handle the middle order. I have him. No doubt about the fielding. Of course, it's him.
Yeah.
But if I take yesteryear's Jacques Kallis, somebody who evolved into so many different forms of cricket.
All-rounders, essentially.
He was essentially all-rounders. My belief is that all-rounders are great, but a cricket team comprises of specialist batsmen and specialist bowlers. But in between, if you have a bunch of all-rounders, it's a captain's delight. Any company has specialist coders, business folks, etc. I think it's that middle order and that middle segment, which is a company owner's delight to have your product managers. So I think that loop sort of sets in well when you take cricket also in context.
I think the cricket fans here are going to enjoy this example. But thanks so much. Yeah, this has been amazing.
Pleasure.